Welcome to part 2, section 2 of my Yamaha Warrior fixer-up videos. This one we're going to be putting a new clutch in here, just replacing the friction and steel plates. I have a Tusk brand clutch kit. Hopefully we don't find anything else in here that needs to be replaced. Oops. Take these 8mm side cover bolts out. I'm going to pay attention to make sure they're not all a bunch of different sizes. You know how they are with that. Some of these are kind of loose. That one there wasn't tight at all. So maybe, I'm assuming somebody's been in here before. This is a 1987, so I can't imagine. Somebody's probably done something to it at some point. Nope, that one was a little bit longer. Okay. So let's give this a little help, but not break the ear off this. Some light taps. There, it's starting to separate. There it goes. Yep. So it was stuck on this guide pin right here. It's got two of them. One here and one here. This one stayed with the case cover. Okay, I believe I have a new gasket for this in my gasket set. So what I'm going to do to try to avoid breaking anything is I'm going to ease these off little by little. Kind of eased them off little by little until I got all the spring tension off. That way you're not hanging it all off of one of these pegs in here, because they can snap off pretty easily. So that must be essentially the throwout bearing for the clutch right there. I'll just slide right out. Try to keep all this stuff together. That way I can put it back together the way it came out, hopefully. Springs and everything. All right. Do I have a socket that big? And it's got one of these locking tab washers. So basically, when you tighten this nut down, there's all these tabs that come off here, and you bend it so it's making contact with the nut, and that'll hold it so it can't loosen up on you. And technically you're supposed to replace, those are one-time use. You're supposed to replace them every time, because what could happen is if you bend that more than once, it will weaken it, and then it could snap off and be flinging around in there, and this could come loose and cause you to have a bad day, essentially. Right in there. See how it's bent over, touching that nut. So that keeps it from loosening. It's like a locking washer, and then it kind of hooks into this groove right here. You can see where it hooks into this groove, and that keeps that locking washer from being able to spin. Look at that. It's tearing off. So that piece there that I was just showing you, as soon as I bent it down, it split and it's coming off. It does have another one up here, so maybe we can just use that, the one that hasn't been bent already yet. Whoops. I keep kicking the leg of the tripod, I'm sorry. Alright. Set that down. Try to ease this off here. Very gently. Give it a couple jiggles. There. Doesn't appear to be anything wrong with this piece, so that's interesting. I'm trying to easily just pull one of these off so I can look at it. Well, still has some friction pad left. Let's check out the steel. It's a little bit discolored, if I'm honest. Usually it's supposed to, it almost looks like it's been pretty hot in its life. I don't know if you can make that out in the camera or not, but it looks like it's been heated up pretty decent. It's got kind of a bluish tint on the outside of it. I'm not sure what's going on over here. Almost looks like somebody was sanding on this. I keep kicking that. I'm sorry, people. Just kick it. We got some kind of a weird washer in here. I might have to go on the internet and find maybe somebody's got like a diagram of where everything goes. That's what I do with the blaster when I couldn't figure it out. So I'm gonna leave this just like this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the new clutches. I'm gonna get a little bucket and I'm gonna let them soak in some oil until tomorrow, and then I'll put those in and put this back together real quick. Alright, it's the next day. I've got my friction clutches soaked in oil overnight, so those should be ready to put in. So I ran into some problems when I was messing around with my blaster clutch, and realized that there's a certain way things had to go in there for it to work right. So knowing that, I did some research on these, because one might think, you got friction plates and steel plates and they're all the same and you just stack them in there and everything's happy. Well, that's there's a little bit of difference going on. So what I did is I went to, I think it was Parts Geek or Partzilla, and I looked up an exploded diagram of the clutches, and then it had like everything numbered, and then you could then look at that number and see what the part is and if they have any or not. So what I found out from looking at that diagram is there's actually two different clutches, friction clutches. So these ones, they had two different part numbers for these. You had one individual one, and then the rest of them were the same. And also there was two different part numbers for the steel ones. you had 2 that were a number, and then 4 that were a different number. Alright, so now I can tell the difference here. So I got 2 of them that are thicker, and you can visibly see that they're thicker, than 4 that are thinner. So I could use deductive reasoning and kind of use that diagram to figure out where do the ones that are the 2 that match up, where those go, and where the 4 that match up go. So I got that figured out. What I can't figure out is all these friction discs or clutches are, there's only one that's different according to the part numbers, and as far as I can tell, the only difference I see in the ones that came out of it is one of them has a notch right here on one of these ears, and the rest of them don't. On my new clutches, they all have that notch in one of the ears, and I've been like inspecting them. They all look like they're the exact same thickness, and I can't tell a difference. If there is a different one, it's supposed to be the very first one you put on. But like I said, I can't see a difference in any of these. I don't see anything stamped in them that identifies one as being slightly different than the others. So I guess this aftermarket kit, maybe they're all just the same. This is a Tusk brand clutch kit. This one has nothing. So I take back what I said earlier, and I did actually find one of these Tusk brand clutches that are slightly different than the rest of the other ones. So the difference is this one has 2 notches like the rest of them, because I looked at all of them. This one doesn't have any notch in these ears that stick up. So I'm going to put that one on first, because that's the only one that's different. Okay. Now we can put on our thinner steel plate. Line up the grooves, kind of. Alright, now we need another friction plate. Okay, now we need another thin steel plate. Again, I'm trying to make sure the teeth on the inside of the steel plate is somewhat lined up with the others, because that's going to make it a lot easier to get that center drum slit on there in the end. Okay, so we got friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel, another friction. Okay, now we got to put this spring washer in there. Where'd it go? Here it is. So we got these things. It's got waves in it, like a spring washer, or I think it's called some sort of a cushion washer, according to the parts. And there's 2 of these. So you go your oddball friction, a thin steel plate, another friction, another thin steel plate, another friction, and then the first one of these. So pop that in there. Seems to fit in between the, it fits in between the friction material on that clutch. Okay, so you got that on. Now we need one of the thicker plates. So we put a thick one on. Okay. Now we need another friction. Now we need the other thick one of these. Now we need another friction. Now we need our second wave spring, whatever you want to call it. Stick that in there. Wave spring. Now we need a thin steel one. Okay. Now we need a friction. Another steel. And then the last friction. Alright, now to go over that again, you got your oddball friction plate, you got a thin steel plate, you got a friction plate, you got a steel plate, you got a friction plate, you got your wave spring, you got a friction plate, or no, sorry, after the wave spring you got a thick steel plate, then a friction, then another thick steel plate, then a friction, and then another wave spring, and then a thin steel plate, and then a friction, and then your last steel plate that's thin, and then another friction. Just put it on whatever way we can. This is going to be the fun part, is getting this thing all the way back down. You know what? Maybe it'd be easier to assemble all these clutches onto this thing first. So let's try that. We can get this back together a little easier now. So I think it'll be easier to slide these through this way. Possibly. Let's get this all together now. Falling apart on me. Uh-oh. If I put a couple of springs on here and a couple of these bolts, just to try to hold it together. Yeah, therefore nothing, I won't tighten it up real tight, but I can make it to where, because the problem I'm having is like everything's trying to fall off the back of this as I'm trying to push it on there and adjust everything, because I need to be able to move these around to get them to all slot in without everything falling off the back and having to start over. So now I put a couple of springs on here and a couple of these screws, which is going to hold this on here so I don't have to. And I put them on pretty loose, but tight enough to hold everything kind of in place, but loose enough so I can move it. So now let's try getting all these kind of straight with each other. still gotta get these splines over here to line up too, don't forget. You gotta have a bunch of stuff lining up. Okay, I'm at the splines. Can I turn this gear here? Down a little bit. Yep, got a couple more to slide in. A couple more. There. Alright, so I had a couple issues. I think you need a special tool that you put in these pegs here in order to hold this all still so you can torque that nut. Now it's a pretty important nut and I usually always like to torque stuff like that. But since I don't have that tool, I just went ahead and buzzed it down with my impact gun. It's supposed to be at 60, I guess, so I'm pretty sure I got it close to that. I put a little bit of Loctite on it, and I also I got that locking washer crimped over there pretty good. I used the tab that hadn't been used yet. So I just tightened, I put my new clutch springs in this pressure plate here, and I just went around and spun them all like a turn at a time until I got them all seated, because you don't want to snap off one of those pegs in there. So just keep going around, tighten them all little by little till you get it seated, and then torque them all to like 8 foot-pounds according to the numbers I found online. And then you got your little throwout bearing here. You just stick that back in there like that, and then we should be good to go ahead and put the cover back on with our new gasket. But I think we covered all the more difficult stuff about how to stack them clutches properly, and I will see you in the next video, which will be probably me painting the frame. I don't think I'm going to bother the prep work because that's pretty boring. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.